My name is Konstantinos Papadikis, and I'm a trained mechanical and chemical engineer, and currently I'm the head of the civil engineering department as well as the dean of the design school here at Liverpool University. We tend to look the design is a process, and there are different levels of design processes, if you like. So in the design school, we tend to look at the design of large-scale infrastructure at its various levels. So in other words, through the Department of Urban Planning and Design, we are talking about city planning. Through the Department of Architecture, we are looking into space utilization and design of different forms and buildings, in other words. Civil engineering comes into the picture as the discipline that makes all of the above actually work. So in other words, civil engineering is the discipline which looks at the design of the supporting structure of the large-scale infrastructure, if you like. And then the industrial design basically looks at the design of the different components that basically make the space functional. I think there are various aspects that need to be considered in this case. So our vision is to become a leading unit in the provision of professional and interdisciplinary education. Okay, so in other words, we still keep the distinct features of each discipline, but at the same time we are trying to integrate the interdisciplinary aspects from all different professions. So in other words, our students are not only exposed to the core knowledge of a particular discipline, take for example architecture, but at the same time we're trying to bring the students together from other disciplines in order to have a complete understanding of the complete curriculum in the profession. In addition to that, I think our design school has additional benefits in the provision of research projects, interdisciplinary research projects, for example, in the form of summer undergraduate research projects that can take place between different departments. Students can actually work in a research project from a different department than the one that they're actually studying and get the knowledge of an additional program. So that's quite an eye-opening, if you like, experience for them. And at the same time, they understand the language that needs to be spoken at the professional level. So in other words, when the students go out in the industry, they will need to be able to cooperate with all of these different people from different backgrounds and be able to understand the language. So that's the most important thing, I think, that we are able to deliver to the students in an integrated framework. Our programs, some of our programs are actually accredited. For example, the program of architecture, BEng Architecture, is accredited by the Royal Institute of British Architects. And in addition to that, the civil engineering programs are also accredited by the Joint Board of Moderators. In other words, the Institution of Civil Engineers, Structural Engineers, Highway Engineers, and Highways and Transportation. So there are 4 different institutions basically that they accredit the degree programs in civil engineering. When it comes to architecture, as I mentioned, it was the Royal Institute of British Architects. We are going to be aiming for gaining professional accreditation for the programs in urban planning as well as industrial design, but this is something that will happen in the future. And what is the benefit? The benefit in having accreditation is that it provides a fast-track route of becoming a professional architect or a professional engineer or a professional planner. To put it in plain terms, just having a degree in a particular subject does not make you a professional engineer, for example, or an architect. You need years of experience to gain the necessary knowledge, let's say, and to have high responsibilities, let's say, in real projects. Our degree programs provide a fast-track route to this professional recognition, which basically means that our students completing our undergraduate and postgraduate programs will be able to be exempted from the professional examinations, professional qualification examinations. So in other words, they will only need to attend the professional interviews, the professional review interviews for the particular discipline and gain the status of chartered engineer. Why is it important to be a chartered engineer? This is the natural progression within the profession itself. What does that mean? It means that the higher responsibilities you take, the higher your salary and the higher your recognition. So nobody will pay you simply because you have a degree program. People will pay you because you are a responsible person, and you are a professional person, and you have experience and you can put it in practice. This is why engineers and architects and planners and professional planners and architects and engineers are very, very important in this field. Please keep in mind that the design disciplines are very heavily practice-oriented disciplines. So they have the reality, let's say, embedded on that. We're not just talking about theories, we are talking about hands-on experience and experience in managing projects and successfully completing those projects. And this applies throughout the school, not only in one particular discipline. It's a unique feature of all the areas. And this is actually what I meant previously about bringing the interdisciplinary aspects of these disciplines into the education. Students are aware of those necessities, if you like, or responsibilities, let's say, that are specific to individual profession in addition to their own. So that's the main. I think it really depends on which program you actually want to follow. So, for example, if we look into the architecture program, students need to have a natural passion, if you like, for sketching, to be creative in their concepts and ideas. Of course, that's not an easy job, okay? Not all of us, can be given a specific space and turn it into like a beautiful building or something. But when there is a natural passion for that, I think that's a fundamental prerequisite for the students to enter, let's say, the architecture program. When it comes to the more engineering, if you like, related programs like civil engineering or industrial design, I would expect that, again, the natural passion, the interest to the program has to be there. And of course, in addition to that, you also need to have a good background in mathematics and physics. So as you know, when it comes to the engineering disciplines, and for example, civil engineering, industrial design, a lot of calculations are included. So you need to be able to understand the maths and physics that go into the subject. Urban planning, again, it's along the same lines as architecture, practice-oriented subject, quite different in many areas because it will take into account urbanization patterns, urban economics, in other words, the understanding, let's say, of like societal aspects into account and so on. So there are many, it really depends on the profession, in the discipline that one chooses to follow. And as I said, the natural passion and the interest on the program needs to be there in advance. Sure. Again, I think this is quite uniform in the school, across the school. However, there are some exceptions, let's say, especially when we look into the engineering discipline. So, for example, there is extensive support from academics and tutoring and mentoring the students and guiding them through research projects within the discipline. And as I mentioned earlier, cross disciplines as well. So we really focus on the provision of research projects at the school level of interdisciplinary nature. So we would like students, as I mentioned earlier, to be exposed to research and problem solving, let's say, aspects that are not, uniquely identified in a particular discipline, but they're also shared across different disciplines as well within the school. In addition to that, there is a well-established industrial advisory board in the Department of Civil Engineering, and we are also planning to expand this concept in other departments as well. Like the Department of Architecture has started building its own industrial advisory board together with industrial design as well. So there is industrial mentoring. There are placement opportunities that are provided through the program. There are industrial mentors specifically allocated to students to explain to them the different career prospects and possibilities available within the discipline. And I think from our experience, the interaction has been quite fruitful so far. The students really enjoy that. The industrial partners really enjoy that. And in many cases, actually, the students have the opportunity to work in industry-specific problems with the industrial partners through these mechanisms, through the industrial boards of the departments. It has been a really successful model and has already led to some PhD admissions in universities like in Canada, Australia, of previous graduates working with the industry and being able to provide a more complete portfolio even after the undergraduate level, without even moving into the postgraduate side. So direct entry from an undergraduate degree program into the PhD because of this background, basically. In total, we are approximately 100 staff, approximately 96 to be more precise. Okay, so we have 96 staff across the school, academic staff. In addition to that, 23 technical staff, as well as 11 professional services staff. There is a huge diversity in the backgrounds. I would say more than 50% of our staff are international staff coming from all around the world, from different parts of the globe, US, Europe, Australia, Africa, basically everywhere. And we have, typically our staff are PhD holders. It's, I would say, almost a fundamental necessity for our staff to become members of the university. However, we still have quite a lot of staff with professional experience, rich professional experience for more than 20 years in the industry. And this is more reflected in the practice-oriented subjects like architecture, industrial design, and urban planning, for example. And the students, I think they can get a valuable experience through the interaction with the profession. In other words, with people that have extensive experience in the industry, and they are able to transfer, to bring the profession into the delivery of the program. Quite a lot of our staff actually are also professionally qualified. We have specific expectations from members to continuously develop themselves. We expect staff to gain professional qualifications and to retain those professional qualifications during their career in XJTLU. We offer quite extensive support actually to students throughout the school, and at the lower level, if you like, each student has the academic advisor. They can always refer to the academic advisor to deal with difficulties that they might be facing in, let's say, progressing through the program. In addition to that, we also have the departmental committees that allow students actually to attend and express their problems, the issues that they might be facing, not only academic issues, but also personal issues. So there are people like student development advisors, counselors that can help students get over the difficulties that they might be facing, throughout their program. So yeah, I think there are different levels of advisors, both at the academic side as well as on the personal side, to help with the modules, progression, personal issues, even medical issues, mental issues, and so on. I would say that we have really world-class facilities. Each department, again, depending on the nature of the degree program, there are state-of-the-art laboratory facilities that the students can actually get the hands-on experience. They can come up with real implementations, let's say, of their design projects. They can work on research projects. We are talking about equipment that exceeds 10 and 20 million in some cases, robotic arms, 3D printers, structural loading frames, large-scale open channel flow modeling, computational resources for large-scale simulations as well. So there are all sorts of different facilities that at the exposure basically of the students. And in addition to that, we also have dedicated design studios in the Department of Architecture, Urban Planning, as well as in Civil Engineering and Industrial Design. Because again, design is an indispensable component, let's say, of all of the program. Students have access to facilities, they have access to design spaces, they have access to homerooms that they can take full advantage of in order to enhance the learning through the process. Just follow your passion. If you are interested in any of the programs that we are actually offering, we are really happy to have you. Be prepared for tough work. But again, all I just want to say is that make sure that you follow your heart, you study what you really want to study and you have passion for, and I'm sure we will be successful whatever that discipline is.
So, hello everyone. Here is Juan Dall'Asta. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Architecture and Design in XJTLU. And today we are going to talk about sustainability and what it means for designers to learn from nature. So let's go for it. So if we want to discuss about design, I think we should start thinking about what's the meaning of sustainability. Sustainability is a word that is very used in nowadays. Is one of the main objectives of design. So should be good to make some clarification about what's the meaning. So according to the official definition coming from what scholars have debated about sustainability, sustainability is related to design, durability, energy efficiency, waste reduction, indoor air quality, water conservation, and green products. So we have a very rational definition of what is it, but my question is going to what can we do, and perhaps why should we do things. So let's start from this. This is coming from a very nice book from Jules Clément, a French landscaper, and he's thinking about the opportunity, for example, to have a garden in a desert. This is an image from an exhibition in Shanghai, happened 2 years ago. So we can see in a very clear way that we have the technology and we have all the advanced machines, for example, to take care of plants, even they are not outdoors, even if we don't have water around, but we can maintain and we can keep healthy plants just using new technologies. So this means that we have the technology to do things in the same way that, for example, we can create this garden in the middle of the desert. You see, it's a beautiful garden with some photovoltaic panels that will provide some energy. So from my point of view, the question is not what can we do, but maybe should be why should we do things? Yeah. So Jules Clément again, he's stating in his book, the Manifesto of the Third Landscape, that instead of just speaking about energy or technological possibilities, we should discuss about necessity. So what's the energy that we need to produce this garden, and who is going to take care of that? Of course, we have also financial conditions that perhaps will allow someone to do this, but the reason is why should we do this? I think that as less is the energy that we need to use to transform and to produce things, as better our design is. I think this is one of the bases of sustainable design. This is a beautiful sculpture. Let me say architecture in Sevilla was a winner of a competition. The budget was 1 million euros. The final cost of the building process was around 8 million euros, so 8 times the starting price. And of course, the problem then is how they are going to take care of this structure. I think it's a good question. Of course, it's beautiful, but perhaps we should discuss again about the necessity of having that kind of architecture and design. So in general terms, we are in a process of globalization. This is changing the balance between geographies. In a way, they are producing new geographies because the opportunities of mobility, of fast transportation systems, and this is producing mutations that is quite interesting in our field, because actually we are in a way interested in the process of transformation of landscapes and cities. So what is happening a bit around the world? This is, for example, a phenomena that is quite interesting. It's all related to what people define as shrinking processes or shrinking cities. This is, for example, some images from Detroit, and it's showing how the city, in a way, is getting abandoned. It's becoming a ghost city. The reason is because of the finance and the economical balance have completely changed. So people start to abandon the city, and this is how the landscape is changing. This is something that for designers is very important to keep in mind, because the scenario and the background in which we are working will be continue changing. For this reason, Serge Latouche wrote a very interesting book, and he defined as the 8R for a happy decrease. And so his 8 magic R's are related to revalue, to recontext, to restructure, to relocate, to redistribute, to reduce, and to recycle. So all the 8 R's in a way are teaching us that before looking to do something new, before looking to do something very fascinating, that of course is good in design field, perhaps we should take care about things that we already have, because we have some hidden opportunities and resources there. For this reason, we can learn from landscape. Why we can learn from landscape? We can learn from landscape because landscape is used to fast transformations. A landscape is always different, will be never the same. A landscape is a continuous process of transformation. This means that it's so related to time. And time is one of the main components in design, especially if we need to think about sustainability. Yeah. So learning from landscape was translated into what happens some years ago in landscape urbanism, in which people start to consider about time, about context, about a new scale. And then this was developed into ecological urbanism, what someone defines as sustainable urbanism, green urbanism, and whatever you want. That's why someone preferred to define them already like fill in the blank urbanism, because there are already a lot of them. But the real base was thinking about landscape urbanism. Yeah. So which are the processes of transformation we should look to? For some scholars, it's easier to define, or at least to divide them into 2 different categories, smart processes and slow processes. So what are we talking about? I really love this image because it's coming, the title is The Magic of Marketing. And it's showing how the marketing can convince people that all things that we are doing are well done. Yeah. So the magic of marketing is telling us that we can have green aircrafts, green skyscrapers, green cars, green packaging, trash burner, green waste disposal, whatever you want. But if you look to this image, perhaps it's not really the city that we are looking for. For this reason, in Europe, especially in France and in Italy, some scholars, they start to think about slow. The starting was about slow food, the idea that we should consume the products that are produced in the place that we are staying, to avoid the ecological impact for transportation, and everything is of course related to the amount of energy we need. Yeah, for example, to eat some delicious cherries during winter in a cold country, where these cherries are coming from, what's the energy that people need to produce them, to move them, and then to finally consume them. So again, it's a matter of responsibility. Yeah. So people that is looking for slow is really not looking for the most advanced technology, or but they are in a way start to asking themselves if the speed of transformation, if this continuous and frenetic process of growing is really going into the right direction. Yeah, it's like someone that would prefer to move to the left, to the right side of this image. Yeah, or in a metaphorical way, like dropping off a green carpet into what perhaps today are our cities. Or a sense of freedom. I have to say that sometimes I really feel like this guy, and I would like to do that, to enjoy the sun and to have a good and nice ride in my bicycle. Of course, this has been translated into different phenomena. For example, urban agriculture, the idea that people can practice and get in contact back to nature, even if they are staying in a city. The idea of agri-city, for example, the idea that is also a way to protect and to take care of the landscape, and the idea, again, to reuse and to readapt existing architecture with new functions. On the other hand, we have the smart world, the smart guys. They're looking forward. They do believe into ICT, communication technologies, mobility, energy efficiency, and this is in a way producing a better quality of life. This is the typical image of what you can see of what people think that should be the cities, with a sort of huge amount of green energy, new technologies, and everything that is in a way producing a better life to the citizens. Yeah, this is the smart city process. We already, someone is speaking about smart city 2.0, someone is even speaking about smart cities 3.0. This is a very interesting example. This is coming from MIT. It's a research done by Carlo Ratti. The name of the lab is Sensible City. They are exploring, they are trying to understand, to figure out which are the important data and conditions that we should consider as designers, as people that is on charge of transformation processes of the city. So the main point is that we used to observe physical phenomena, physical contents, tangible elements, but there's something else. So these maps actually are showing what we cannot see. For example, are maps in which you can see the superimposition of data related to internet use, to data. This is a project that was done for Copenhagen in Denmark. And they were considering, for example, the interaction between this bicycle that is receiving, but in the same time is producing data to people, to discover, to explore the place, to know information. So, of course, this is all related to new technologies. But maybe, or perhaps, one of the questions that we should face is how we are learning from nature. What's the approach that we have to nature? Are we nature, for example? This is one of the questions that for someone found an answer during the 18th century, when philosophers start to think, to say that for a strange reason, human beings, they don't really are anymore that aware of being part of a natural process. We believe, or we feel like to belonging to something different, yeah? And of course, our capacities to transform nature into something else. This is, in a way, what design is doing every time. But if we are in charge of this so big responsibility, we should do it taking into consideration that the best thing that we can do is to learn from nature, because it's the best of the teachers. So this is a famous project in Italy, not far from Torino. Is a Olivetti building, headquarters, and was a sort of revolution in terms of design, because it was one of the first buildings that was completely designed according to the interaction that people and users they could have with nature. But you can see that this nature is not a so fascinating or fantastic nature. We're not in front of the best of the landscape. It's just a conventional, ordinary nature. I think this is the value of this project, because they start to consider what we see every day in our normal lives as someone that has a very important value in our personal life of every day. So the building in this case is just to protect, to observe this nature. Again, an ordinary nature. So it's how this is getting in contact with it. But of course, in one hand, we are looking to, again, to go back to this important and so strong relationship with nature. But on the other hand, we have the capacity of transforming the landscape and our environment. And the city, I think, represents the masterpiece of what human beings can do. This is just an image of New York, because it has been representing a sort of icon about what people can do, what we can do. Yeah, and this is what designers normally are doing. For this reason, maybe we should ask ourselves, for example, what is architecture? Of course, I cannot provide an answer to this very hard question, but I can tell you a small story. I was visiting France with a very important and famous professor, Pierre Gasson, and I was quite young, just finished my studies and very enthusiastic about discovering new architectures. And this very wise and old professor came to me and he asked me, do you know what is architecture? I said, oh my God, this is really something very hard to answer. And he was pointing to the landscape. In his left side, there was this beautiful temple, Roman temple, over a small hill. And in the other side, there was a cave. And he said, you know, this is architecture. I said, what? What do you mean? I mean, is that simple? Yes, very simple. In one hand, you have a place where people, they take the stones and they move it to the other hill, just in front of the other hill, and they build a temple. This is architecture. It's just a transformation of what we have. But we have the ability to give a meaning to that material, to that stone, because that stone became a temple, and that temple represents culture, hopes of that people for centuries. I was quite impressed. Exactly in front of that, we were visiting this project by Marc Barani. He was one of the selected best 40, under 40 years designers around the world. And he did exactly the same process. So he worked with these both stones. The brown one was the one that was coming from the process that he was caving the hill. Actually, this is the project for a cemetery. And the white one was coming from another place. And he was playing with this sort of dialogue and contrast between the two stones into producing a void and into producing a basement. So this is how he was inspired by the wise words that we listen from this very nice professor. So again, the point is, are we nature? It's again very hard to answer to this question, but Claude Lévi-Strauss, in his book Basic Structures, he said something important. He's explaining that there was a moment in which we passed from the idea to be natural, in a natural state, into transforming to a cultural state. Yeah. And this is, for example, with these beautiful paintings in Siena in Italy. They're from the 1393, 14th century. They are showing the good government and the bad governor. Yeah, and this is, and Lorenzetti is showing the landscape. And this is the landscape of the good government. So you can see that the good government is the one that is transforming the landscape. So it's not the idea just to keep it as it is and just has to be natural in a way. But at the time, the idea is that also when we are transforming in our processes of transformation, we can do things that are good, that are related to a good governance. So the landscape was becoming a natural landscape, but also able to be a productive landscape to produce food for people. Yeah? This is quite important in a moment in which we are discussing about what nature means, how can nature be part of cities, how nature is important in design processes, and how can we learn from nature. This is a beautiful drawing painting from Asia. It's called Metamorphosis, and it's actually showing what we can do, our capacity to transform nature into our environment. Yeah? And this is also what some architects have been doing. So this is a project from Dominique Perrault, and he was playing with nature. So at one moment he just decided to put an artificial tree, just a sort of to create this contrast between the natural tree and the artificial one. Of course, the natural is much better, but the contrast is making people to think about that. I think it's quite interesting. But in a moment in which we do believe that everything should be green, also we have to remember that in a way, this is the famous and wonderful Roman aqueduct in Segovia, in Spain. And it's a completely artificial urban landscape. And however, people love it, and we can recognize it as really a masterpiece because different reasons, because of the beauty, but also because was their capacity to move water and to provide water to people. They were making their life much more qualitative. So this is opening, a very interesting question. And this is a wonderful project. Maybe it will help us to answer to this question. So this is Oscar Niemeyer in Brazil. This is a museum just located in a wonderful place with a very fascinating and poetic ocean in front of the museum. The museum is quite nice and beautiful. The shape is obviously not looking to simulate any natural element. It's just in a total contradiction to the landscape. But the idea of being part of the nature is here. So all the concept of this building is just to frame what is happening around. So you can see, you can have the opportunity to visit the artworks, but in the same time, you can also every time enjoy about the landscape that is surrounding you. So this is making, a sort of really interesting relationship between cities, between architecture and between nature. And this, for example, are the masterworks, again, from Oscar Niemeyer. This is Brasilia, was designed as the new capital of Brazil, and was just completely transformed. And his abstractism and his poetic into transforming that material we were discussing, generate this beautiful landscape. And this is producing identity. People recognize themselves into these masterworks, into this beautiful, wonderful architecture from Oscar Niemeyer. This is Ville Savoie, has been a sort of milestone from architects coming from Le Corbusier. Yeah, and someone asked to Le Corbusier, so what do you think about the relationship between your architecture and the nature? Should it be more natural? Should it be more with natural stones? Should try to be better integrated in a way? And Le Corbusier was very clear, providing an answer to this question. He said, I love nature, and the way that I respect nature is doing something different. The reason my buildings are white is just to allow people to enjoy not my architecture, but the surrounding landscape. Yeah? And the same we can say about the temple we were discussing earlier, or the normal farm that we can find everywhere around the world in the countryside. Because there's a sort of genius loci, there's a sort of natural integration between what humans are doing and what is the natural surrounding landscape. Because the process has been, in a way, natural, well controlled, and then things can really dialogue in a perfect way. Yeah, I love this picture because this picture actually was the one that inspires one of the wonderful movies from Wim Wenders, a wonderful, fantastic German director. And he was inspired because these are not stones, these were stairs, were concrete stairs, swimming, someone that built a swimming pool just close to the ocean. Of course, what is happening? Nature slowly will reconquer all the territory. So slowly it has been transforming this artificial swimming pool into something that slowly is getting natural. And of course, in a very short time, we will discover that the process will be completely transformed. For designers, it's so fascinating. It's so interesting how our architecture can be or should be not integrated into nature. And how can we learn from that? Yeah. For example, this is a very interesting artwork. Art is always very important as a reference for designers. So they transformed the Brooklyn Bridge in Manhattan in New York into a waterfall. Yeah. The idea of the artist was to trying to show something that is absolutely not from that place, creating this contrast, trying to make people think about what is nature and what is not. Yeah. And so on with several of beautiful projects. This is Carlos Ferrater in the Botanic Garden in Barcelona. So he used to move some of the soil and reuse it, creating a new geography without having an impact of removing it and taking to other parts. Yeah. Or this is a project from Emilio Abad's in Tokyo. It's an office building. His idea, he's one of those architects that is looking to produce green architecture. So you can see that you can even not see the facade in a way of this building because it's completely covered by trees. The question is how natural it is, yeah? Or the wonderful phenomena of the High Line in New York, yeah? There's a beautiful story again that I can share with you. So the High Line in Manhattan was on because they need a transportation system in the southwest part of Manhattan. But as things are changing, are transforming, then after a while, this was useless because then the production, the places, and all the necessity of this place completely changed. So the High Line that you can see on the left side was abandoned, yeah? And for some reason, no one can make a decision so fast. So on the right is not a garden, it's just the process of transformation that has been completely natural. So it's just nature that by itself went back, conquered, and in a way has this ability to design a beautiful landscape. You can see this image. So people that was living in these houses was so inspired. They were like, look into it and say, this is a wonderful idea. This can become really a park. Why not? Because of course, people were just saying, okay, finally we can just demolish. So was nature inspiring them? Was nature giving them an idea? And the idea was transform this infrastructure into a garden and people will enjoy it. And this is what happened. So a wonderful project from Diller, Escofidio plus Renfe, they transform it. They keep it some memory. They keep the railway tracks to remember what that was before becoming a park. So it's a beautiful project in which nature and memory are working together. An interesting project from Jean Nouvel and Gilles Clement for the garden. So with a green facade, this is in Paris exactly. You can see a small part of the Tour Eiffel in the right side, and the garden looks like, oh my God, someone is really not caring about this garden. Actually, this is the idea from Gilles Clement. It's a manifesto of the third landscape. So it's the idea to have a garden that is not that beautiful from a aesthetic point of view, but is keeping the real nature of the place, increasing from index 1 to 19 biodiversity. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful experiment. Or, for example, also this project by Herzog and de Moron in Madrid. Yeah, how can nature participate to the urban landscapes? Or this wonderful project from Renzo Piano. This is the Paul Klee Museum in Switzerland, in Bern. And I love this detail. I love how Renzo Piano expressed the opportunity to join nature and architecture. So these aluminum and these steel beams that are those that are performing from the structural part of the building, you can see the idea of piano. The idea was just to use them and to make this contact with the surrounding nature as they are just roots. So for a while, imagine that it's just architecture that has put their roots into the ground and it's just coming up. I really love this interaction between both of them. Yeah. Or this is maybe representing also, for example, the Eastern culture. This is a project from Kengo Kuma. So the idea that the architecture is a device to enjoy and to appreciate nature. So it's a sort of frame. It's a framing machine that is able to enjoy this wonderful interaction between inside and outside. From Kengo Kuma, the same project, the Kirosamo Observatory, in which he's playing between this double relationship with nature. In his description, he states that it's like you will have this platform and you have the perception that you can jump into nature. And the other one is the observatory, this sort of room in the central part in which the only thing that you can observe is the sky. So in one hand is you going to the nature, in the other hand is nature coming to you. I think, are beautiful, poetic. Or for example, this glass facade, in which the idea of the stones that are in a way just framing the landscape, and it's a sort of structural glass, so in this sort of contradiction but beautiful interaction between artificial and natural. That is one of the key parts of his architecture. This is a Paulo Mendes da Rocha Museum in São Paulo in Brazil, and it's again a sort of continuity. You can see it's a square, it's a sort of piece of land, but in the same time is becoming architecture. This is an image from the MoMA Museum in New York of these projects. And this is Emilio Ambat's. This is one of his small houses. In the first image that you can see here, you will have the perception that it's just a modern house, white color in a wonderful landscape. If you can go into details, you will see that actually all the house is underground. So what can we see are just two walls. The idea of Emilio Ambat was to build these walls because there's a sort of secret room. You can see this small room in the top where you can meditate, where you can observe the landscape, where you can, it's a place in which you can be by yourself, in which you can dedicate your time to silence. And in the other hand was just the idea to keep all the landscape open. He was studying the environmental data, and he understood that the wind was blowing in a very specific direction, and his idea and his purpose was just to keep this continuity of the wind blowing. This is the reason he chose to put his house underground with this beautiful poetics and this idea, again, like Kengo Kuma, that is the nature coming to your place, is the sky that can play a beautiful role in your life. This is a masterpiece from Luis Barragan in Mexico City. It's a garden, and he just decided to have this green around eucalyptus trees with this water tank and just a white wall that actually is just a screen. If you read Barragan's descriptions about this project, he said that his interaction with nature is related to the idea that this screen can reflect the shade of the tree. So the poetic that is coming from his relationship with nature is actually coming to the idea to allow the shade of the trees to be reflected on this screen. In China, we have very interesting and beautiful projects related into sustainability, into this sensibility. We are not just speaking about technological performance. For example, the project from Li Xiaodong, the bridge school in Shaxi in China, was the idea to build a bridge between two different communities. Of course, you know very well the Tulu architecture, so the idea was to link them. Sustainability, in this case, was strictly related not just to the performance of the building, but to allow people for the first time to know each other. And the idea is to have a small library in which kids, in which people, they can go there. The bridge is linking the two communities. The architecture is giving them this opportunity to have a place that they can share together. And then you can see the small library can open. All the doors is becoming a sort of open theater, an outdoor opportunity to people to be together. Yeah. So the bridge is composed by two layers, the one with a library and another one that can be used at every time of the day. He's using bamboo, he's using local materials, and he's showing a wonderful project. The last one is related again to sustainability from the same architect, from Li Xiaodong, is a Li Yuan library in Beijing. He was inspired by what he found in that place, these branches that were collected by a gardener. And he got inspired, so he decided that this can be part of the building. And the way he's using is providing shade, so has a better energy performance. he also decided to build a small water tank surrounding that is producing a microclimate that is also improving the quality of the users of the building. Of course, it's beautiful because we can find a strong integration between the materiality and the site, but in the same hand, there's another project. These are all the environmental performances of the building. There was the idea that is a library where people can bring the books that they already read. So there's another level of design of project that is taking into consideration not just environmental performance, the sustainability from the type of materials that the designer was thinking about, but it's also about users. It's also about the social benefits that design can produce. So I really found a wonderful idea that if you already read a book, you just take it with you, you put it in this library. When you give a book, you can take another book that is coming from another person, and you can will continue to exchange knowledge and to improve your cultural level. So, as you can see, we are looking for this important, getting back to this important relationship with nature. Green architecture is going there. Sustainability design, sustainable design, sustainability, of course, is, I think, the most important of the topics nowadays for a designer, but there's a lot. I think we should remember that day by day, we can learn from nature. Thank you very much.